My name is Jack. I'm a pen tester for Black Hills. I've been with Black Hills for the last 3.5, going on 4 years now. I do internal pen tests, external web apps, APIs, sometimes physicals, so a little bit of everything. But I focus a lot on web app security, and that's kind of where this came from with the browser extension. So yeah, let's jump into it. So here's some resources and links. If anybody didn't know, this is somewhat of a part 2. I previously gave a webcast introducing this topic, as well as going through SPF, DMARC, and DKIM in excruciating depth. So if you want a refresher on those, if you go to the MailFail website, which is m.al.fail, because MailFail was taken, there's a YouTube video. That's the part 1. It'll go through everything. We kind of are going to be picking up where that left off. So we're just assuming DMARC is already implemented. But yeah, so for anything there, I added a little tab to the top, which goes to a part 2. So I'm going to be going through about 10 demos. So got a lot of content here. And all of the commands for each of them will be there. So if you want to do that now, you can get all the commands and follow along. Those are just 2 other domains. So I set up the SMTP relay one, and that is to analyze email headers. So I've been asked previously about those, so putting everything up front. All right. So before we begin, I just want to ask everybody, who here has ever spoofed an email? It could have been in college or, okay, cool. A lot, actually. So hopefully I could show you a few more tricks. There's actually a lot to it. Email has been one of the most decentralized protocols and implementations around, and it's been around since the 80s, I believe. So it has been built up over time, and not till 2010, 2013, were there really security protocols in place like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC that were widely used. So we're going to be going over SPF misconfigurations, DMARC misconfigurations. I'm going to show you how to crack some DKIM RSA keys. We're going to go over a few new concepts like DMARC and SPF domain takeovers, which is something I came up with. We're going to spoof Microsoft Direct Send, and then we're going to go through these concepts of NSEC and NSEC3 Walking, and finally, I'm going to go over a few OSINT and OPSEC tips. Just do a click. Okay, so throughout this demo, if you want to try any of this stuff, feel free to send me your best Phish. Those are the 4 domains that I use to do all the testing for this, so I could use all the main providers. They each handle phishing emails and like misconfigurations differently. So there's no standard across all of them. Feel free to have fun and let me see what you got. Maybe I'll show it at the end. So this all stemmed from, I saw in many bug bounty programs that mail server domain misconfigurations, including email spoofing, missing DMARC, SPF, and DKIM, are excluded from submission types. And that kind of irked me because it's one of the most powerful things you can do. If I can send an authenticated email from your CEO to the accounting department, that seems like something you should value. So in my opinion, this is all high vulnerabilities, but yeah, don't expect to make any money. So what does the extension do? It's a browser extension, and you might ask, why'd you write a browser extension? You could have made it like a CLI tool. Well, I didn't think it was going to be a fully fledged out thing. I had a train ride, and I wanted to make an extension that I could quickly check the SPF and DMARC of a website. And then it went down rabbit holes and rabbit holes and rabbit holes, and eventually we're here, and it's close to 3,000 lines of code that does practically an entire SMTP pen test for you. So a lot of the cool parts of the extension is it will reference RFC documentation. So anytime I make a claim, it will bring you to the exact page in the documentation where that claim is supported. So if anything's incorrect, feel free to make a pull request or just contact me. Or if you want to update something or add something, let me know. So it also provides commands to exploit. Since I'm a pen tester, I don't want just theory, I want exploits. So it gives you nmap commands, spoofing emails commands. It gives you everything at the tip of your fingers. So here we're going to be walking. This isn't really a demo. This is more, let's see if I could find it. This is more just showing the extension, kind of what it does. So you go to a website, you'll click on the icon for the extension. A separate window will pop up. and it'll have all of this information. So for this is Proton Mail. And at the top, we have 3 just useful links. The leftmost one will check for an SMTP open relay. The middle one is hunter.io, which will show you publicly available emails. So for Proton, it'll show you all the people that have Proton email addresses. And the last one is MX Toolbox, which is a pretty popular IT and sysadmin website where it'll run a bunch of health checks. So the one thing to note about it is that everything is clickable, pretty much. So all of the the headers for each of the records, so the MX record, the SPF, and DMARC, it will autofill the current domain into the link, and it'll run some type of other check. So it's a place for you to go and get more information, as well as the little eye icons. So anytime I make a claim, there's a little eye icon that you can click, and that will bring you to either more documentation on why that thing is bad or the RFC. So we don't need to sit through all of this. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so this is going to be our first real demo. So who here has heard of SMTP open relays? Awesome, about half. Who has exploited an SMTP open relay? Cool, more than I would expect. Yeah, so we see this a lot. It's a really popular, just thing to look for, but I've never really seen anyone exploit it, so I wanted to create this whole demo. I set up a SMTP open relay on SMTP relay.me. I'm using postfix with 1 or 2 other misconfigurations, I guess you could call it. If you want to do the same, all of the commands are on the website. Yeah, so SMTP open relay is what it sounds like. It is a relay. So instead of only ingesting emails for the domain, so in this case, SMTP relay.me, you can use it to proxy to other email servers. So in this case, we want to spoof an email from jack@smtprelay.me, and it is going to go to the Gmail account. So this is kind of what it looks like. Instead of just ingesting that email, it's going to take it and then relay it to the correct email server. So the reason this is bad in a case like this is since we want to spoof smtprelay.me, we look at its SPF record, which designates certain IP addresses to send email on behalf of it. So what we do is we grab that nmap command that's already formatted for you, run it. It tells you it's an open relay. So since that IP address is authorized to send emails, we can use that as a proxy to send to anybody. So here, again, all the commands are on the website. We're going to be sending the mail from the recipient to, and that's going to be coming from jack@smtprelay.me, going to mymailfail42@gmail.com. I copied and pasted a lot of this so you don't have to sit through it, but yep, inside the email, there's actually a second to and from header. And if you want to learn more about that, revisit the part 1. I give a nice email. And if we go to the Gmail, we have the email. It wasn't exactly formatted. I forgot to put breakpoints. But here, we even see Gmail thinks it's important according to Google Magic. There's no indication it's a spoof. And even if we go and check, we have passed now SPF and DMARC. And this is just showing inside the email header. If you wanted to really look, it says it is jack@smtprelay.me designates that IP address as a permitted sender. And since it has an open relay, we can abuse that IP address and authorize ourselves. And that's just one case to Gmail, but I could have changed that to address to be anybody. So that was the first demo. Now we're going to get into DKIM. This is the only part from the previous talk that I kept in because it's kind of interesting. DKIM is a way to sign certain headers and fields within an email so that it can't be changed or tampered with, right? One interesting part about DKIM is that it doesn't sign the body of the email. So the body could always change. That's a common misconception, sorry. And if there's actually a key that's used and advertised by the domain that's less than 800 bits, it's theoretically possible to crack that key. But realistically, if it's about 512 bits, that's what you're going to be able to crack in a reasonable amount of time. So reasonable amount of time is not as long as you think. So it's about $30 a cloud compute and about 2 days worth of work. And that's the DigitalOcean droplet configuration that I use. Yes, it's almost $700 a month, but you're going to kill it after 2 days. You will kill it. So if you fire up that DigitalOcean droplet, and here again is all of the attack commands. It even gives you the instructions to install the utility. So what we're going to be using for this is CADO NFS, which stands for number field sieve. You don't really need to know anything about it. Pretty much it's just this number theory way of calculating prime numbers very efficiently. And you go through it, you just build the binary, you launch it. I do it in a screen session so that I could leave and not worry about it for 2 days. Come back after 2 days, it'll give you 2 large prime numbers. And then this following demo, since I don't have 2 days for a demo, we're gonna just pick up from that part. So you ran this, you left it for 2 days, it outputs 2 prime numbers. So this is showing I have an insecure DKIM key on my website. This is another script that I did not write. This was found online. But all you have to do is replace P and Q inside of this. And if anybody remembers from cryptography class or anything, RSA works with n equals P times Q, where P and Q are 2 very large prime numbers, and the product of that is the public key. So we have the public key because they post it publicly in the DNS record. So we're trying to find those 2 big prime numbers. Now that we have it, that script creates the private key. So I wrote a second script that is also on the website that we're going to be outputting the private key here to a file. And then we're going to be using the script I wrote to sign an email using that private key. So we're going to be sending it to the Proton mail address. And we have to supply which selector we're going to be using, but that's about it. So you run it, it'll print out the entire email header, the entire email along with all the headers, and then it'll actually send it. So you notice here it goes to spam instead of the inbox, and it gives you a little warning that it could be spoofed. So if we go investigate the email headers, we'll see that even though we've cracked their private key, used it correctly, sign it, it says it failed. And it gives you a reason, public key too small, 512. Since you can crack them in 2 days, a lot of these email providers have realized they probably shouldn't use the small keys. So I believe the next one up is 763 bits, and those, there are hit and miss. That might take you a few weeks, but you can sneak that one through. Another cool application of this is using it for ARC. So ARC is signed in the same manner using the same keys and selectors. So if you sign an ARC message, I don't believe there's the same notification. ARC acts as this chain of custody, so it's not actually authentication. It's just proving that it went from this server to this server to this server, and they did their due diligence. So you can spoof certain parts of the chain. Okay, so when you're looking at SPF and DMARC, the 2 main things you're looking for are, well, first there's the DMARC. DMARC has a policy. And DMARC is saying, if I identify a spoofed email, what do you want me to do with it as the owner of the domain? There's 3 options: reject, quarantine, and none. Reject will outright just not deliver the email. Quarantine will likely send it to spam, although it's up to the receiving mail agent to determine what it does with it. And the none does exactly what you think. It does nothing. So even though it's spoofed, it says, don't do anything, just let it pass. Go to the inbox, essentially. SPF, on the other hand, designates certain IP addresses to send email, like we previously just bypassed. If there is a plus all or a question mark all, that defaults to pass. Question mark all technically defaults to no action or no information, but both of those essentially pass. So if your IP address isn't in the list, there's a base case, and instead of base case like block everything else, you could think of it as like a firewall rule, where you build all your rules and at the bottom it's like block everything else. A tilde all will be block, but a plus all will say allow everything else. So I wrote another script, and this is going through the process of first downloading the script, and then I'm going to download the top 1 million domains. Going to format that so that it's just a list of domains. And then the script from my GitHub, we're going to run it against the top 1 million domains. And you can see here, this is more common than you would think. Everybody has DMARC, but almost everybody sets it to policy equals none. And there you got starwars.com is set to, they don't have a DMARC policy, and the SPF policy is set to plus all. So we can bypass SPF and DMARC. So here, I'm doing a quick SPF bypass, which I go over in detail in the first talk, but pretty much I have a SPF, I have a text record that points to my current IP address. So I authorize myself because I own the domain. And here I'm specifying that I'm saying hello spf.mailfail. So in SMTP, there's this interesting communication where you have to say hello, and some servers will say like, be polite, like say hello first. And that hello is actually important because it goes and then checks the TXT record there and sees if you're authorized. It's not actually the from address in the body of the email, so you can spoof it that way. So for here, we can see that we can spoof emails from starwars.com. So I sent one from vader@starwars.com. Our authentication results, DMARC is none, and it gives the policy is none. We've bypassed SPF. Spam score is 0, and the action is inbox. So one nice thing about Proton Mail is it'll actually give you the spam score instead of some Microsoft gobbledygook. But yeah, so if you're missing DMARC, you can send emails. So there's no indication here that this is a spam email, a spoofed email. And the whole point of this talk is for red teamers, it takes a lot of effort to go through the process of standing up infrastructure, getting your domain reputable, and then that immediately gets burned. So why don't we just use their domain against themselves and just spoof emails that are authorized as that company? We don't have to worry about setting up Go Phish. We don't have to worry about any of that. All right. So one of the easiest ways to spoof an email is using Microsoft. So they have this thing called CloudShell, which if you have Windows 11, it will, if you right-click on the terminal icon, I think there is an option to open as CloudShell, and it'll connect to your Microsoft account. If not, you could go to portal.azure.com, and in the top right, there's a little shell button, and it'll drop you into an ephemeral shell. It gives you a Microsoft IP address, and it gives you a PowerShell terminal. So PowerShell has this send mail message commandlet where all you do is supply the SMTP server, which in this case is just an example one, but that's the format of every single Microsoft mail server. So if you wanted to do blackhills.com, like it would be blackhills-com mailprotect@outlook.com. That is just the MX record of whatever website you're trying to send to. In this case, victim@example.com from CEO@baddmark.com. Just an example. So doing this, I was able to spoof a lot of people. UPenn, house.gov, canada.ca, University of Michigan, ca.gov, cPanel. A lot of universities do not configure any sort of DMARC or SPF a lot of times. My guess is that it's because they have so many students, like, I don't know. I really don't. I think it's infrastructure based, but this is going into my inbox, my Outlook inbox, and you'll see that some of them have unverified, but some don't. And that's just depending on whether or not these companies or these domains have certain things configured. But just using that one trick of going into a CloudShell, you can send emails from almost any domain, and it's indistinguishable The only thing you have is you don't get emails from jack@upenn.edu often. And there used to be a trick that we came up with that Microsoft actually put it in the body of the email. So we added, since an email is HTML, we added a CSS snippet that removed, and it was added as a table. So we made tables invisible and 1 pixel. So we were actually able to remove that from the email so there was no indication that it was spoofed. I just tried it again, Microsoft fixed it. So next demo is going to be the DMARC hierarchy of stupidity. Like I said before, there's 3 policies you could possibly have: reject, quarantine, none, and they do the respective options: reject, spam, inbox. It's getting a little cut off at the bottom, but you'll see that I have an example DMARC policy. DMARC is very simple. You just start with this v equals DMARC1. You give a policy and a percentage. The percentage is implicitly 100. So if we supply percent equals 100, or if we don't, 100% of spoofed emails will be sent to spam. Now, what if you set that to 60? 60% of spoofed emails will be sent to spam, but 40% will be sent to your inbox. Why? You might, let's go back. Why would you do that, you might ask? I think it was a part of the RFC where companies were hesitant about implementing DMARC at the time because they didn't want emails to be dropped. That was their big concern. So they implemented this percentage where a random number generator on the receiving mail server will just determine 60% of the time spoof emails don't go through, and 40% of the time it does go through. And they thought that was a better option than just not implementing DMARC. So one more example, if we have the policy is reject and a percentage of 10, 10% will just not be delivered, and then 90% will go to spam. So the main issue with this is when you have quarantine and you have percent equals something less than 100, because now there's a chance that I can hit your inbox instead of spam. So the same script that I was running before, I run it, and then all I do is grep for less than 100, so we only get those results. And you can see from here we have Flickr, O'Reilly, a bunch of EDU websites, pypi.org. So and all on the right side, you can see which percentage they're set to. So here's a little demo. So we run that. And we're going to be using epicgames.com because they have a perfect 50-50. So if you're a gambler, you got better odds than roulette. So just to double check, this is loading the extension, going down, and we can see DMARC. Another thing to note is the extension. I try to make it as easy as possible. Bad things red, good things green, informational blue. So you're welcome. Here, I go through the entire process of explaining, since it's 50-50, 50% of spoofed emails are treated as policy is set to none instead of quarantine. And then it links to the RFC where that's defined. So showing. Okay, so then we go back to our friend, portal.azure.com, go into a CloudShell. One more thing to note about the CloudShell is every time you refresh it, you get a new IP address. This is amazing for Spam House. If you send an email and it says your IP is blocked from Spam House, which is this crowdsourced way of blocking IP addresses, refresh the page, refresh the shell. You get a new IP address and it's still Microsoft. So you're welcome. Same thing, send mail message. I'm sending it to my email, so I just redacted it. I don't want send it to the other emails. Don't spam me. And then we're saying Jack at Epic Games, do you want to play a game? And then there's 50% chance it lands in your inbox. I sent it twice. There's 2 different emails that hit my inbox. One says unverified, the first one, and then the second one has no indication that it's spoofed. It is exactly 50-50, and I got lucky. I actually sent it a 3rd time, and it was also, it had no indication that it was spoofed. Again, the only thing it says is you don't often get emails from Jack at Epic Games, but that is every email you get in Outlook, every single one. And there's actually a way to disable that, and a lot of organizations do because it's just annoying. All right, so moving along. This is a technique that I came up with while doing this research, and it's SPF and DMARC domain takeovers. So while I'm looking at all these domains that are authorized to do certain things, I thought to myself, like, what if someone fat-fingered that while typing it in? Or what if they didn't register, like keep the registration going? So I came up with a few attack paths for SPF. It's pretty straightforward. If it's authorizing that domain to specify an SPF record, you specify IP addresses, you just create your own SPF record that's already pointed to it, and you authorize your own IP address. For DMARC, the domains usually come into play for these two fields called RUA and RUF. And that's a part of DMARC called DMARC reporting, where if you have spoofed emails, the domain owner wants to know about it. So the receiving mail agent, if they notice like, oh, it failed DMARC, it goes and sends an email to whatever email is specified and pretty much is like a reporter. It just reports it, and then you could either get aggregate emails or forensic emails. Aggregate is what you think. Once a week, it'll send you an email and it'll say, you've had 5,000 emails that didn't pass DMARC. These are the associated IP addresses that sent them. A little bit of information. Forensic emails actually give you the email headers, potentially the email body as well. So I went out and I looked for certain, using this extension, looked for websites, loaded it, and one popped. And it was actually one of the largest password managers currently used. And I submitted it, and yeah, so their forensic reporting email address was fat-fingered, and I was able to then go and register that domain. And now I can see all of their employee emails that don't pass DMARC. So here's a little demo. I don't go through the whole process of registering the domain and everything in the demo, but just to give you a glimpse at what it looks like. If you go to the MailFail website and run it, I have as many misconfigurations as possible. So you can definitely spoof email from it, but it does say MailFail. So here, under the SPF section, it uses OpenRDAP, which is like the new version of Whois records. That's the best way I could come up with to find if something's registered or not. If you've looked into it, it's actually quite annoying. Like there's a bunch of APIs and a lot of money. So for an open source tool, it doesn't really work. So OpenRDAP was the best way to go about it. Gives you a list of all of the registered domains, and you can see that it's included. So in SPF, it'll go to that domain and then look up its SPF record. So if you set one authorizing yourself, you now just bypassed SPF and DMARC. And under DMARC, you could see this domain is not registered, so we could then go register it, and then we could sit back and just ingest all of the emails that fail for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't know what that's doing. We're gonna move on. Okay, so who's heard of Microsoft Direct Send? Okay, we got a handful. So it is this great thing that Microsoft did that they thought a default Microsoft configuration that permits unauthenticated external users to send internal emails was a grand idea. And of course, their reasoning behind it is like printers. Like, why wouldn't a printer need to, back or send a PDF to an email address? So that's their justification. We have a whole blog. Steve Borsch actually came up with this. He told me about it, and we have a whole blog on it. It's spoofing Microsoft 365 like it's 1995, and it is dead simple. This is from Microsoft's documentation that I pulled up earlier today, and the headings got cut off, but that section is direct send. Requires authentication, none for direct send. Uses TLS, optional. Port 25, so it's just, the use case, I'm sure, is some backwards compatibility stuff, but it's pretty simple to get. And it's default for any company that uses Microsoft for email. So again, we use our friend CloudShell. And what you would do is you would launch MailFail on a website. It would then look for the MX record. You're going to copy that and paste it where it says SMTP server. And it should look something like this protection.outlook.com. That's every Microsoft email server. And the thing to note about this is you can only spoof internal emails. So you can't spoof out to a Gmail, a Yahoo, a ProtonMail. You have to do it inside their domain. So to accounting@example.com from CEO at example.com. And you could get the point there. The one thing that I added to this over Steve was I noticed that if direct send was somewhat blocked, the sender would get a bounce back, and that would be a little noisy. So I found this great delivery notification option within the send mail message, and if you do that, it instructs the email to, no matter what happens with the delivery of this email, don't inform me about it. So whoever you're spoofing will not be tipped off that something's going on. Yeah, this is from their documentation. So there's a few different options. We want never notify. And this is actually from a pen test that I did. Everything is hopefully redacted. So BHIS test, and in this case, you could see there's no warning, like you don't normally get this notification from that person, because at the time, the CSS trick was working, so we hid that. And then I said, hey, John, this is a test. Let me know if you see this in your inbox, Jack. And the two things to note is that I was sending it from Matthew to his boss, John. And Matthew's icon in Teams, as well as his team status, popped up. And his email footer, like his signature, the entire thing was graciously applied without me doing anything. Microsoft did that. All right, so moving on, I think we're doing pretty well on time. We have NSEC Walking. Now this is a little adjacent to email security, but it does have some applications. Who's heard of NSEC Walking? Cool, nobody. All right, this thing is awesome. So who remembers like AXFR records from, yeah. So this is the new kid on the block. NSEC records are used by DNSSEC. And it stands for Next Secure Record. So in DNSSEC, there's this concept of proof of non-existence, and they need that for the whole thing to work. So a Next Secure Record is you start at example.com, you say, give me the NSEC record, which points to admin at example.com, which points to beta at example.com, so forth and so forth, that. And then it keeps going until it wraps back around to example.com. So you can walk the chain as like a linked list until it wraps around and you know you're done. And you've enumerated the entire zone file. So one thing I noted is Namecheap has this by default. So I used a Namecheap website and I was like, why am I vulnerable to this? Or I guess vulnerable is a strong word, but their default, if you just flip the switch in the Namecheap dashboard, it uses NSEC. So, so here's an example. The extension takes a while to load for this specific example, so I pre-did it. Stanford has a lot of issues, but we'll just skip down to the good stuff. You can see they're using DNSSEC, and then here, they have their NSEC record set up for DNSSEC. And it is the entire zone file. My extension caps out at 10,000 just to not DOS the extension. But the interesting thing is people try and hide their DKIM keys. You can't hide the DKIM key if I have your zone file. So if you put a random string being like, no one's going to brute force this, I can still find it. And then I can see if it's vulnerable to being cracked. So that was the main purpose behind this. But overall, it's just a cool thing to do. Move it along a little bit. So there's actually at the bottom, it says, NSEC is enabled by DNSSEC. You can use these commands and actually enumerate the entire zone file. instead of just the 10,000 records. So I go through the process of installing the dependencies. There's this really good tool called N3 map, and install that with pipx. Yeah, I already have it installed, so. And then all you have to do is run it. In this case, I think it fails the first time because it didn't like the www. So you just delete that. And it starts going through. That took a while. So I sped it up a little bit. I paused the video, came back. But it's going at about 160 queries per second. You could see maybe at the bottom, 182,000 records. So if we open up the zone file now, and this isn't a vulnerability, this is the entire protocol. It was built this way. So there you go. And the rest of the video is just scrolling through. You can see they have a lot of like dedicated endpoints for students and Zoom and whatnot. So NSEC was terrible. So they came up with this great idea called NSEC3. And they're like, okay, we don't like people just going through in plain text our entire zone file. That's probably not great. So let's hash it. The thing is, NSEC3 still needs proof of non-existence. So if I query astif.example.com that doesn't exist, it will check, see if it exists, and then give me the two closest matches on either side of it. So what you can do is randomly generate a bunch of domains that don't exist, and it will continuously give you hashes of domains that do exist. So this is great for offline cracking, right? If you have a bunch of hashes and you have the zone file in its entirety, then you know when you have everything, and you can also crack it at 1 million per second because it's, it doesn't say it up here, but the most common one is SHA-1. So you can crack at 1 million guesses per second instead of the bandwidth overhead of DNS, network latency, things like that. So our friends at the NSA use NSEC3. So I figured, why don't we crack their zone file? Not only do they use NSEC3, they're using an insecure algorithm for their DNSSEC. The main reason it's insecure, I think, is because it's not using elliptic curve cryptography, which is now the recommended one. So I don't know actually how to break it, but someone does. So you can see here, we're not actually getting the information. We're just getting a hash.nsa.gov. So again, at the bottom, there's informational, and it says, here's all the commands that you can go and run. Now, an interesting thing is N3 map and then like brackets is predict. So there's no way to walk the chain as we did with NSEC because it's not a linked list. We're just shooting a target and it's saying, oh, you missed, here's the two closest. So it uses some like statistics or whatever to predict it. And all you have to do differently is have this tac predict at the end. And now we'll get this nice nifty looking loading bar. And it's like within a 90% confidence level, it will enumerate everything. And then there we go, we have 154 records. So we can just open it, take a look. This is the entire NSA zone file. And, but the thing is, they're all, the extra information at the end is saying like number 1 means use SHA-1. The dash is actually the salt. So that is the most standard thing you'll see is 1 and a salt of just a hyphen. So moving over to our cracking rig. Before with that, we have to format that file in a way that Hashcat can understand. So it comes pre-installed with this other tool that'll do it for you. And then over at the cracking rig, I copied the file over. You just have to believe me. And then there you go. We got like 6 3080s going to town on it. So the first thing you'll see is equip. So that's the subdomain. And then you'll just keep getting more and more and more. And this is not a surefire way to get everything, because if they're using something that's like a random string, the odds you crack it are low, but it's still higher than if you're going to do DNS brute forcing. And you can know when you have everything, which is a nice perk. Yeah, relating it back to email, you could use it to crack DKIM keys a lot faster. Or not crack DKIM keys, find where the DKIM keys are. Okay, the last one, I think we're really short on time now. So reply to. So you send an email, it's spoofed, it's coming from, spoofed.com to victim.com. It kind of goes into the void, and then you don't know what happens to it. You don't know where it goes in their inbox, if they reply to it. So one cool trick is you can append this reply to header, and instead of replying to the person that sent the email, you could change it to be a doppelganger domain. So you'll get the reply if they hit reply, reply all. So one last demo, and then I guess I'll take one or two quick questions, and then I might have to head out here. So here, I'm just doing the same exact Star Wars example. My SPF is configured to authenticate myself. We're going to send it to Proton Mail. And inside the body, so it's actually none of the SMTP commands, it's inside the body of the email. So this is what the user will actually see. I'm just going to copy and paste it quick. So right there, I add the reply to Vader at starwars-corp.com as the doppelganger. And then at the bottom, you could see it says OK queued. That means it was sent. I think it takes 1 or 2 seconds here to show up in the inbox. And there you go. Now we have the email. Looks exactly like the first demo with this. But if you hit reply, it no longer goes to that user that you initially spoofed. It goes to Vader at starwars-corp.com. So this is a way to make sure that the initial person that you spoofed isn't alerted, and you can act more stealthy. One more thing really quick. So OSINT and OPSEC, there's this great website called DMARC.live that I heard from Jay Haddix on a podcast, and pretty much it indexes all the DMARC records, and then since the emails are unique, you can then go and yeah, so here's meta.com. It matches those DMARC records across domains, so you can see what other domains use that DMARC record, so it's a good indication if they're owned by the same person. And then the other one is OPSEC considerations. I'll skip over that for now. These are all of the protocols that MailFail checks for. A lot of them I didn't get to go over. These are the ones we did. All right, in conclusion, yeah, pretty much use DKIM. If you have DKIM or SPF, use DKIM. Set your domain policy to reject or quarantine. Don't use PCT, and your mileage may vary with demos because of reputation and whatnot, but keep trying, and email garbage fire. So here's some good references. Yep. And resources and links again, if you need it. Also, one more thing I forgot to mention is the slides are on the part2.html. You could go there and download them if you want. And questions. The question is use SSL, that flag, does that need to be there? You don't. It's just, it might help with the domain reputation or the email reputation. Like, there's a lot of weird factors that go into if your email lands in an inbox. All right. Thanks.